A new report is shining the spotlight on the serious economic and other disparities experienced by one of the fastest growing communities in Massachusetts, Latinos. Among the findings, as of 2019, close to a quarter of Latinos lived in poverty in Massachusetts, more than any other group in the state, and almost 5% more than the national average. Latinos in Massachusetts also had higher unemployment rates than most others in the state as well, and a higher rate than Latinos nationally again. And nearly a quarter of Latinos in Massachusetts experience food insecurity, well above the rates of all other groups, and almost 8% more than Latinos nationally. A staggering and appalling set of numbers, but even more disturbing is what appears to be the root cause of it all: major disparities in K-12 academic performance. And as the Boston Globe's Marcela Garcia told us on Boston Public Radio yesterday, these gaps have been the trend for years, and it hasn't been getting nearly enough attention where it should.
We're going to keep talking about the data points as if they're news over and over again until we have people from the community, until we have Latinos politically representing the community and elevating these issues in the halls of political power in Massachusetts.
I'm joined by two leaders of the groups behind this study. Dr. Lorna Rivera is the director of the Mauricio Gastón Institute for Latino Community Development and Public Policy. That's at UMass Boston. Juan Fernando Lopera is co-chair of the Latino Equity Fund at the Boston Foundation. It's good to have you both here. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Lorna, starting with you, what's the most jarring part of the report to you? What's your major takeaway?
Well, among the things that you mentioned, that Latinos, compared to other subgroups in Massachusetts and nationally, have these high poverty rates, high unemployment, high rates of, food insecurity. But other issues that come out really point to how much geography matters and where you live in the state and the kinds of job opportunities, the kinds of housing. Affordable housing is a critical issue that has been elevated in the report because Latinos have very low rates of home ownership. And so, I think that that's something that as well is affecting their economic mobility, their access to health insurance and other factors that are highlighted there.
Juan, I want to add, put some flesh on the bones of something I mentioned in passing to add to that list. Education numbers in Massachusetts are just stunning. Let me put them up. 8th graders, Latino education in Massachusetts, 28th nationally in reading, 21st in math. Low income 8th graders, 39th in reading, 35th in math. This is in a state where the average kid has just about the best education in America. Is that not the root of all this evil, or am I missing something?
Yeah, no, I think it comes down to that. We need to look at that root cause. Educational opportunities are the beginning, and I think just this issue is one that certainly Dr. Rivera and I worry about all the time, but it's an issue that should worry every single resident of Massachusetts. Latinos are the fastest growing demographic, as you mentioned. There's 800,000 of us, so there's such a asset narrative to this that we need to look at, so that we're all solving for this issue across every public-private segment of our economy, because the economic prosperity for Massachusetts is inextricably linked to the prosperity of the Latino community.
I want to follow up, Lorna, if I can, on that growth thing that I mentioned and Juan just mentioned. This is amazing. Since 1980, 92% of the population of growth in the city of Boston, almost all of it, is the Latino population. And then you look, I want to put a study up from the Federal Reserve, the Color of Wealth study in Boston from 2015. I would bet that every viewer of this show could recite without me putting it up, because we've all heard it 1,000 times. White families' wealth average $247 grand, black $8. Right in there, that I almost never hear mentioned, Puerto Rican wealth, even lower than blacks, 3,000. Dominican family wealth, 0, and that is not a typo. Unless I'm wrong, why have those two numbers been so thoroughly ignored in the retelling of that sad tale from that research?
Well, again, I think that when we think about some of the data, we don't do a proper analysis by breaking it down by subgroups. And even if we say Latinos, we're not recognizing that diversity of Latinos, that there are particular historical circumstances that affect their migration. And Dominicans are really, in the DR, really struggling, and they're migrating. They're at our border right now, at the Mexican border. And so Puerto Ricans too have suffered so much since Hurricane Maria. The island is in a financial mess. And so we continue to also see, displacement of Puerto Ricans coming here still, as well as all these other Central American groups that are escaping poverty. So we don't capture that in these statistics, right? We don't break it down like that.
But I guess what I'm saying is that which we did break down in a survey that practically everybody in Greater Boston has memorized, you almost never hear it broken down beyond white versus black. Never Puerto Ricans, never Dominicans, at least in my experience. Juan, when Marcela Garcia I just played a little sound from her on the show yesterday, she said it's all about elected power. She mentioned that the Gastón Institute did a study, 68 total Latino elected officials statewide, most of whom are on school boards. Only 8 Latino elected officials on Beacon Hill, 6 in the House, 2 in the Senate. Do you subscribe to her notion? There can be a lot of talking and a lot of research and a lot of policy promulgation, but until Latinos have political power, we're not going to get from here to there?
Yeah, certainly. I think that's spot on. Representation matters, and we need Latino representation certainly in the public sector and in government, in the private sector as well. It's critically important. I think policy moves can move these trends that we're seeing. When I think about the great work, and she joined us last week when we did the release of the Boston Indicator report that we're quoting these numbers from. But Secretary Acosta, having her lived experience and her understanding of the Latino community needs is so important. She mentioned the 220,000 jobs across the Commonwealth that currently exist, and made a very clear connection to the only way we're going to fill those jobs is by having more of our Latinos, upskilling our Latino workforce. Latinos are double the rate of unemployment from the state average. We practically are at full employment in Massachusetts at around 4%, but Latinos are double that rate. So we definitely rely heavily on the Latino community.
Well, that's one of the reasons why in the part of the report that is on recommendations, more robust job training programs, I know are part of the mix. Juan, you were among, I believe, the 40 plus Black and Latino leaders yesterday who signed on to this health equity compact, and Michael Curry, who is one of the leaders, head of the League of Community Health Centers on the National NAACP board, was on the radio with us yesterday. There will be specific legislation proposed not only to address health inequities as such, but the social determinants that essentially create or at least help advance those inequities, correct? Sometime in 2023.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, it was it's a historic moment to have that much representation. As you stated, 40 plus Black and Latino leaders in healthcare saying we have to seize this moment. We have to advance health equity through policy, also through each of our individual organizations. I work at Beth Israel Health, and there's a lot we could do in this large system where we have a lot of opportunity to tap into the Latino talent that's out there. But yeah, this compact is looking to make that systemic change that's needed through policy to address these health disparities that have existed and persisted before COVID, but were clearly highlighted during COVID.
Lorna Rivera, one last thing. I moved here 30 some years ago, and I can't say the precise date, meaning to Greater Boston. Every single governor who has been in office since I moved here has talked about the achievement gap and what a nightmare it is for kids of color and what they're going to do about it. And I just read you numbers that low-income 8th graders, 39th in reading, 35th in math. Is there any reason to think in our final minute that this is actually ever going to be addressed, or we could be having the same Groundhog Day discussion a year from now, 10 years from now?
Well, I mean, I certainly think that we do need to do a lot more with our English learners. Not all Latinos are recent immigrants, but we do have a significant portion of the English learners in our state that we haven't had appropriate bilingual education, native literacies. We need more English ESL classes, long waiting lists for families to be able to advocate more effectively. The families also need access to English. So it's really a holistic problem, right? In terms of where also our Latino majority school districts, right, under receivership, mostly, all of the school districts that have been under receivership have been Latino majority. So there's some serious structural problems, and we do have a federal funding now that we can really try to use more effectively to address these inequalities.
Billions of dollars, great recommendations. I hope the money and the recommendations meet sometime soon. Juan Lopera and Dr. Lorna Rivera, thank you both so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.